This is Robeson here talking about the history of the modern world. This is going to be part one of a series. We're going to lead up to the modern day. And so we'll get started um, and start with what we call the post Columbian world. So that's the world where, after 1492, when Christopher Columbus discovered Hispaniola, he was sent to the New World by the King and Queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella. And that kind of set off a rush to explore all of these territories. And what was significant about it was the two most powerful countries at the time were Spain and Portugal, both in the Iberian Peninsula. Portugal had already created the transatlantic slave trade and had made forays into West Africa. And now Spain was getting into the game to look and see what opportunities it could exploit as well. The interesting thing about this time period is that the Pope, who obviously was at that time in the last part of the 15th century, was the most powerful person in the world. He was from Spain. He was a noble from Spain. So Spain had a in with the papacy. So in 1494, the Pope put together a treaty between Spain and Portugal. So again, very incestuous relationship there amongst the three parties, called the Treaty of Tordesillas, which in 1494, which basically established that Spain and Portugal could have their run of the territories of the New World. And so this is the reason why um, everything in Latin America is Spanish speaking, with the exception of Brazil. And this is also the reason why um, you see the Spanish kind of struggle to maintain this empire that they were really given without having earned themselves. So they were given this vast expanse of land that really leads from British Columbia all the way down to Archegos, to Argentina, and them trying to figure out ways to administer this, cover it, and I think they ended up focusing on extraction. So gold and silver being their main point of emphasis during this period of time. Over time, Portugal was upset with this arrangement because obviously the Spanish got the heads up, or got the lion's share of the land. And so in 1529, the Treaty of Saragossa was done, kind of to kind of set right this arrangement. But again, these two treaties have put Portugal and Spain far above the other European countries in terms of what they have access to, and setting them up to be far richer than the rest of the European nations. And this set off a firestorm of action, criticism, and I would argue that it set off the Reformation, which is the removal of the papacy as the sole or dominant religious authority in the world. So let's get into it. When Pope Alexander VI made this deal, the Treaty of Tordesillas, the Dutch, the Spanish, the French, the British were all, kind of middling powers, trying to figure out a way, as their crown authorities were trying to figure out ways to make additional money. This is the beginning of where the merchants, sailors, and merchant, adventurers were able to start going out off of land, off of their home countries, and start making money. And the crowns of these different nations were looking for ways for additional revenue to come in. So, with the explosion of Spain and Portugal's monopoly to get all these riches, the French, the Dutch, and the British decided, you know what, we're going to rob these people. And so this is where piracy actually comes from. The papal authority has given favor to these two countries. The European countries start to reject this and start figuring out ways to balance this out. And so the French are the first ones to kind of jump into robbing Spanish ships in the Caribbean. The Dutch get involved with it as well, but the British are the ones who do it the best. And this really kind of introduces Henry VIII to the story. Henry VIII is one of the weirdest characters in history because he's always brought up as a major figure that's never passed over in the story of England, right, or the story of colonialism or the world in general. But he's always kind of presented as a buffoon who basically spent his time, killing his wives or replacing his wives. But that's really a misleading perspective on him. He actually is a radical who was very cunning and used that misdirection of wanting to get rid of his wife, who was Spanish, by the way. Catherine was the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella. And I think we'll tie back to why he did this. He was very cunning. He saw that the British were being, the English were being left out of these spoils in the New World. The Vikings had been in England for many decades and many centuries at that point. So there is lots of evidence that the British or the English knew where North America was, obviously. And so Henry VIII does a lot of interesting things. He starts to kind of encourage, some of his naval officers and naval, capable people to go out and see the world. And he says, hey, won't we let's look for an alternate route to India. And so these are kind of the clever plays that are done because they didn't have authority to go to the New World. But if they're exploring to find another path or another route to India, then automatically or accidentally you can end up in North America and say, "Oh, my bad, I didn't know that Virginia wasn't the Indies," right? And so there's a lot of that going on. So yes, you can say that there was a religious movement started in Germany with Martin Luther, the Reformation that challenged the way that the Catholic Church ran its business and conducted itself. But I would argue that the Church of England, which was created by Henry VIII, was a cynical play to no longer have to listen to what the Pope was doing. He became himself, the King Henry VIII, became the head of the Church of England. And now they had the authority to do whatever they wanted. And what they wanted to do was get a foothold into the New World. And that is exactly what they did. So one of the things that is interesting about the colonial battles or the imperial battles that happened amongst the European powers at this time is that each of these countries had their own particular strengths. The British best skill is administration. But at this early stage here, it was their naval capabilities. And so their ability to use their navy, to use their um, ability to fight on the move, really gave them an advantage at just creating havoc in the Caribbean as the Spanish were trying to bring their booty back to Spain. And so this really is what is the impetus for the British Empire being created. Because if you're going to be in the Caribbean or in the New World, pilfering, you need home bases in which to act. And so many of the original pirates were based in the southwest part of England, Cornwall, Jersey. These are different areas, and they would go out for long periods of time, steal things, rob things, pillage things, and then bring them back, and then sell those goods back in England. And the church, or sorry, the crown started to become aware of these type of activities, and this is where a position or known as the Lord High Admiral was created, and his job was to kind of figure out what are these people doing, why are they bringing all this money back, what crimes have they committed, how can we try them in court if they've committed crimes, if we have proof, and then better yet, how does the king get his cut? And so this is where the birth of admiralty law comes from. And you can see how all of this ties in together. The papacy makes a decision, a political decision, uh, based on reverence to its home area, and it caused ripple effects all throughout the world as different entities responded to those decisions. And probably set Spain and Portugal up for failure by giving them such large territories that they hadn't earned themselves and they didn't have necessarily the capability to keep. Because again, possession is 9/10 of the law. So this now creates this great world competition that defines the next 300 years, and probably is culminated in the middle of the 18th, in the middle of the 19th century, with the British being the preeminent power in the world. We call that Pax Britannica. So again, just a quick synopsis, talking about the kind of the world that we live in, where it comes from, and the different factors that are at play. So we have the papacy as a political entity primarily, giving favor to its favored nations. The other nations that are left out now forced to compete and be cunning and brutal, setting the stage for centuries and decades of war between these powers.